Didn't I promise that I'll be back? Well, here I am, still Yulia, last time I checked. And you are still watching a fascinating series on the Algerian Revolution on my channel, Rebels and Revolutions. Last time, we talked briefly about events that led us to this tragic sequence. Today, we will consider the situation on the onset of this revolution. While the official beginning of this revolution, or war, is November 1st of 1954, I think that the real start of this chain of terrible events was on May 8, 1945, when all of Europe celebrated the defeat of German Reich. On that day, a demonstration of Muslim Algerians in the city of Sétif erupted, openly demanding a fully independent Algeria. Despite being severely outnumbered, French gendarmes opened fire, killing several demonstrators. In response, the crown went on a killing spree, murdering over 100 Europeans. Predictably, as the word about these atrocities spread, the outraged Pied Noir, with minimal intervention of the French army, engaged in a killing spree of their own, murdering 10 times as many native Algerians. While the peace was restored, French General Duval, who was in command of French forces, with a remarkable foresight, predicted that the French might have another 10 years in Algeria by the virtue of superiority in arms. But uneasy peace will not last much longer than that. In fact, it lasted 9.5 years. The next step in this drama was a disembarkation of the 7th Regiment of a highly distinguished Tiraili. Sergeant Ahmed Ben Bella served with distinction in this regiment, and even got a medal pinned directly by de Gaulle himself. I wonder if the great Frenchman had any inkling of how far this soldier who stood in front of him would go. Ben Bella was born and raised not far from Sétif. He was so appalled by the event that took place there, and upon learning about this event, he saw the only true path going forward, a complete independence. He walked that path all the way, becoming one of the principal leaders of the Algerian Revolution, first Prime Minister in 1962, and the first president of the independent Algeria in the following year. After Sétif, the country was deeply divided, with many Algerians who previously wished to be recognized as citizens of France began demanding a full independence from it. The motivations for independence were, however, very different. 3 separate pillars of resistance can be defined. There was the religious movement, which was embodied by the Association de Ulema. There were the liberals, led by Farhat Abbas, and revolutionaries of Masali Haj, who reminds me so much of Grigory Rasputin. After World War II, his party effectively split, with the majority of it becoming the movement for the triumph of democratic liberties, while a more radical wing of his party formed a new paramilitary group, the Special Organization, or OS. In 1954, a group of former OS members formed the National Liberation Front, the first political pro-independence group with its own armed wing, the Armée de Libération Nationale, National Liberation Army. This was a purely nationalist and largely secular movement with the main goal of political independence. Yet all those pro-independence movements, especially those advocating armed confrontation, represented a tiny percent of the native Algerian population, with an incredible task of luring the substantial part of their countrymen to their side, while avoiding the ever-present French intelligence. As I mentioned earlier, the French economy was totally destroyed, with the Fourth Republic robbed first by the Germans and then by the Allies. Since Algeria relied heavily on French subsidies, the economic collapse at the end of the war widened the gap between Europeans and the native population of Algeria. Yet, on the battlefield, both of them shared the burden of war equally. And while the post-war recovery was impressive indeed, with the size of the economic pie beginning to grow, the Muslim share of it continued to decline. And if we adjust this share for the number of people, we will find an even greater decline on a per capita basis, as the growth of Muslim population in Algeria was truly astounding. The population growth rate has slowed since. This brings me to another reason for this revolution. Sometimes the great things that France did for Algeria ended up coming to bite them in the, well, you know where. As an example, let's look at a massive revolution in healthcare that France brought to the Algerian population. These improvements in healthcare, among other things, massively decreased child mortality. The resulting increase in population growth exaggerated already existing shortages of food and necessities among the local population, thus increasing its discontent. This population explosion was way more than just a competition for food and resources. It is, in my opinion, one of the most powerful explanations as to why French authorities, heavily lobbied by Pieds Noirs, so stubbornly refused to offer the rights of citizenship and possibility for civic expression to the native Algerians. The French clearly saw that, if given an equal voice, native Algerians will soon dwarf the European population, simply due to this massive difference in birth rates, rendering them politically non-existent. Moreover, the French expected back then that the Algerian population will overtake that of metropolitan France before the end of the century. Based on these expectations, Muslim Algerians pose a grave political danger to the mothership itself, not only Pieds Noirs in Algeria. As a side note, I do believe that by closing the legal path of expression of their political dissatisfaction, French authorities pushed Algerians, who have never considered taking arms in the name of independence, into the embrace of extremists. Let's stop here, and we will continue in my next episode on this fascinating topic. Do the right thing and subscribe, like, and comment to keep the fire going. Nothing but love to you from Rebels and Revolutions.